15 years. It had been 15 years since my sister Lindsay walked out with my husband Keith, leaving her 5-year-old son Ethan on my doorstep with a note saying he had 6 months to live. Now they stood in my living room, tanned and laughing, asking where the poor dead kid was buried. Lindsay's manicured hand rested on Keith's shoulder as they sneered at my simple clothes. Then the front door opened. Ethan walked in, 6 feet tall, in his doctor's scrubs. Their smiles died instantly. The moment Ethan stepped through that door, the air in the room froze solid. I watched Lindsay's hand slide off Keith's shoulder as if she had touched hot metal. Her face drained of color, going from that fake California tan to sheet white in under 3 seconds. Keith stumbled backward, nearly knocking over the lamp on the side table. His eyes went so wide I could see the white all around his irises. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "That's impossible," Lindsay finally managed to whisper, her voice cracking on the last syllable. "He was dying. The doctor said he had 6 months. 6 months maximum." Ethan stood perfectly still in the doorway, still in his blue scrubs from the hospital. His stethoscope hung around his neck. His ID badge caught the afternoon light. Dr. Ethan Hayes, it read, Pediatric Oncology. He looked at Lindsay and Keith with eyes that could freeze hell itself. My heart hammered in my chest. I felt proud and terrified at the same time. Proud of the man Ethan had become, terrified of what might happen next. I remembered that night 15 years ago like it was yesterday. The doorbell rang at 11:30 at night. I opened it to find Ethan sitting on my front steps, wrapped in a thin blanket, shivering with fever. His skin looked gray. His lips had a blue tinge. He was so thin I could count his ribs through his pajama shirt. Next to him sat a duffel bag and an envelope with my name on it. I grabbed Ethan, first feeling how hot he was, how he struggled to breathe. Then I opened that letter with shaking hands. "Joyce," it read in Lindsay's handwriting. "Ethan has leukemia. The doctors say 6 months at most. I can't do this. I can't watch my baby die. Keith and I are leaving tonight. We're starting fresh, somewhere new. Don't try to find us. Don't contact us. Just let us go. Tell Ethan I'm sorry." I scooped up that burning hot child and drove straight to the emergency room. The doctors confirmed it, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. But they said something Lindsay's letter didn't mention. They said there was hope. They said with aggressive treatment, he had a fighting chance. The next 2 years were hell. Chemotherapy made him so sick he couldn't keep down water. Radiation burned his skin. Bone marrow transplants nearly killed him. I held his hand through every second of it. I slept in hospital chairs. I learned to give injections. I researched every treatment option. I fought with insurance companies. I took out loans I'm still paying off. And Ethan fought harder than anyone I ever seen. That little 5-year-old boy refused to give up. He survived. Now he stood in front of the 2 people who had abandoned him, a living testament to their cruelty. Lindsay found her voice again. The shock wore off, replaced by something harder. "Well," she said, straightening her designer blouse, "this is quite the surprise. But we're not here for some touching reunion." Keith stepped forward, trying to regain his composure. He smoothed down his polo shirt. "We're here because Mom and Dad left something behind when they died." My stomach dropped. Our parents, George and Helen, had died 2 months ago in a car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light. They never saw it coming. The funeral was small, just me, Ethan, and a few of their friends. Lindsay hadn't even sent flowers. "What are you talking about?" I asked, though I already felt the dread creeping up my spine. Lindsay pulled a thick manila folder from her expensive leather purse. She dropped it on the coffee table with a heavy thud. "Mom and Dad's will," she said, her voice taking on a sharp edge. "They left the family estate to both of us, 50-50. Everything, the house, the land, the investments, all of it." I felt the room spin. The house was worth at least $2 million. It sat on 10 acres of prime real estate. Then there was Dad's stock portfolio, Mom's jewelry collection, the rental properties they owned downtown. The total estate had to be close to $4 million. "That can't be right," I stammered. You left 15 years ago. You never called, never wrote, never came back. Keith pulled out another set of papers. We had our lawyers verify it. It's all legal, completely legitimate. Your parents never changed their will after we left. Both daughters inherit equally. He said it with such smugness, like he'd won some kind of prize. Lindsay leaned back on the sofa, crossing her legs. Her shoes probably cost more than my monthly salary as an elementary school teacher. We need to sell everything, she announced. Split the money down the middle. I'm sure you understand, Joyce. It's only fair. Fair? The word exploded out of me. You want to talk about fair? You abandoned your son. You left me to raise him, to watch him nearly die, to fight for his life while you two ran off to play house somewhere new? Oh, don't be so dramatic. Lindsay waved her hand dismissively. The kid obviously survived. You did fine. His name is Ethan, I said through gritted teeth. Keith shot Ethan a look of pure disdain. Whatever. Look, Joyce, this isn't about ancient history. This is business. This house is huge. What do you need it for? It's just you and that kid. That kid saved lives today, Ethan spoke for the first time. His voice was deep, calm, controlled. I operated on a 7-year-old girl with the same disease I had. She's going to survive because of what I learned from my own treatment. What did you two do today besides show up here to steal from the woman who raised me? Lindsay's face flushed red. How dare you speak to us like that? I am your mother. No, Ethan said quietly. You're the woman who gave birth to me and then left me to die. Joyce is my mother. She's the one who sat by my hospital bed for 72 hours straight when I coded during my first round of chemo. She's the one who held my head while I threw up blood. She's the one who told me bedtime stories when I was too weak to sleep. You're just Lindsay. The silence that followed was deafening. Lindsay recovered first. She always knew how to pivot when things didn't go her way. Fine, be ungrateful, but the law is the law. Joyce, you have 1 week to agree to sell or we'll take legal action. We're staying at the Riverside Hotel. You know where to find us. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. Keith followed, shooting me one last sneering look. Oh, and Joyce...
You might want to start packing. That spare bedroom where you kept all of Mom's things, I've always wanted to turn that into a home office. The door slammed behind them. I stood there shaking, unable to process what had just happened. This house, the house where I grew up, where Mom taught me to bake in the kitchen, where Dad built me a treehouse in the backyard, where I'd nursed Ethan back to health in the guest room that became his bedroom, they wanted to take it all away. Ethan crossed the room and put his arms around me. Mom, he said softly, we need to fight this. I won't let them take your home. I leaned into him, this boy I'd raised, this man he'd become. I don't know how. I don't have money for lawyers. I can barely afford the property taxes on this place. Then we'll figure it out together, he said firmly. You didn't give up on me when everyone else did. I'm not giving up on you now. But even as he said it, I felt the walls closing in. Lindsay and Keith had money. They had lawyers. What did I have? A teaching salary and a mortgage. How could I possibly fight them? I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lindsay's smug face. I heard Keith's mocking voice. By the time the sun came up, I'd made a decision. I needed help. At 7 in the morning, I called Mr. Patterson. He'd been our family lawyer for 20 years. He'd handled Dad's business contracts, Mom's estate planning, even helped me with Ethan's adoption paperwork. If anyone could help me, it was him. Joyce? His familiar, gravelly voice answered on the third ring. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. I assume this is about your sister's visit? You know about that? I asked, surprised. Small town. Word travels. Come by my office this afternoon, 2 o'clock. We'll figure this out. I hung up, feeling the first glimmer of hope I'd had since yesterday. Ethan wanted to come with me, but he had a shift at the hospital, a double shift covering for another doctor. Are you sure you'll be okay? He asked, worry creasing his forehead. I'll be fine, I assured him. Mr. Patterson has known our family forever. He'll know what to do. At exactly 2 o'clock, I walked into Patterson and Associates. The office smelled like old books and lemon furniture polish. Mr. Patterson's secretary, a sweet woman named Dorothy, who'd worked there for 30 years, smiled at me sadly. "Go right in, dear," she said. "He's expecting you." Mr. Patterson stood when I entered. He was in his late 60s, silver hair, reading glasses perched on his nose. He'd always reminded me of a grandfather figure, warm, trustworthy. "Sit down, Joyce." He gestured to the leather chair across from his massive oak desk. "I've pulled your parents' will. Let me take a look at what we're dealing with." I handed him the copies Lindsay had left. He studied them for what felt like an eternity, making small humming noises, flipping pages back and forth. Finally, he looked up. "Well," he sighed, "the will is clear. Everything goes to both daughters equally. There's no clause about abandonment or estrangement. Legally, Lindsay has as much right to this inheritance as you do." My heart sank. But there has to be something we can do. She left for 15 years. She never contacted our parents. She abandoned her own child. "Morally, you're absolutely right, but the law doesn't always align with morality. However," he leaned forward, "there might be a way to challenge this. You could argue that Lindsay forfeited her inheritance rights by abandoning the family. But Joyce, I have to be honest with you. That's a difficult case to win, and it would require $1 million to buy out her half of the estate." $1 million? I made $45,000 a year teaching 3rd grade. I had maybe $10,000 in savings. "I don't have that kind of money," I said, feeling tears prick my eyes. "I know," he said gently. "There is one other option. We could argue the abandonment angle in court. Try to get the judge to rule that Lindsay gave up her rights when she left. It's risky, though, and it could take years." "But it's possible?" I asked, grasping at this small thread of hope. "Possible?" he nodded. "Not probable, but possible. Let me do some research. Come back in a few days. I'll see what I can put together." I left his office feeling slightly better, not great, but better. At least I had a plan. At least someone was on my side. When I got home that evening, Ethan was already there. He'd gotten off early. One look at my face and he knew something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked, guiding me to the couch. I told him everything, about the will, about the money I didn't have, about Mr. Patterson's suggestion to fight on abandonment grounds. He listened intently. When I finished, his expression was troubled. "Something feels off," he said quietly. "Did Mr. Patterson seem normal to you?" "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Just a feeling." He pulled out his phone. "Let me make a call. I have a friend from college who works at Morrison and Blake downtown. Maybe he can give us a second opinion." I didn't think much of it.
Ethan was always thorough. It was what made him such a good doctor. An hour later, his phone rang. Ethan answered, listened for a moment. Then his face went completely white. "Are you sure?" he asked. "When? How much?" He hung up and stared at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Rage mixed with disbelief. "Mom," he said slowly, "Mr. Patterson received a wire transfer of $50,000 3 days ago from an account belonging to Keith Morrison." The room tilted. "What?" "My friend has access to financial transaction records for court cases. He ran Patterson's name as a favor. Keith paid him $50,000 right after they arrived in town." I couldn't breathe. Mr. Patterson, the man I'd trusted, the man who'd been at my parents' funeral, who'd hugged me and told me everything would be okay. He'd been bought. "He's been feeding information to Lindsay," Ethan continued, his voice hard. "Everything we tell him, every strategy we come up with, he's going to give it straight to them. He's playing both sides." The betrayal cut deeper than Lindsay's. I had expected nothing from my sister, but Mr. Patterson, he had known me since I was a child. Oh God, I whispered. If he knows our plans, Lindsay will always be one step ahead. Ethan put his arms around me as I started to cry. Not gentle tears, but harsh, angry sobs. Everything was falling apart. My sister wanted my home. My husband had betrayed me. Now my own lawyer was working against me. We'll find another lawyer, Ethan said firmly. A real one, someone we can trust. But if Patterson knows everything, what good will that do? I asked through my tears. Lindsay will anticipate every move we make. Ethan's jaw clenched. Then we don't tell Patterson anything. We cut him off completely. Start fresh with someone new. But even as he said it, I knew the damage was done. Lindsay and Keith had their hooks in deep. They had money, resources, and now they had inside information on how I planned to fight them. 2 days later, an envelope arrived by courier. Official letterhead, a law firm I didn't recognize. I opened it with shaking hands. It was a lawsuit. Lindsay wasn't waiting the week she'd promised. She was suing me right now to force the sale of the house. The grounds listed made my blood run cold. It claimed I was living alone in an excessively large property, wasting family assets. It claimed I was emotionally unstable following the death of my parents. It even included a letter from a psychologist I had never met, stating I'd been treated for severe depression and wasn't capable of managing the estate properly. It was all lies, all fabricated, but it was there, in black and white, signed and notarized. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks from now. Ethan read the papers, his face getting darker with each page. This is insane. You've never even seen a therapist. How did they get a psychologist to sign off on this? Patterson, I said numbly. He must have arranged it. He knows people. He has connections. I sank onto the couch, feeling the last of my hope drain away. They were going to win. Lindsay and Keith were going to take everything, and there was nothing I could do to stop them. Ethan knelt in front of me, taking my hands. Mom, listen to me. I'm taking time off work. However long this takes, we're going to fight this together. I promise you, we will find a way. You've worked so hard to become a doctor. I can't let you throw that away from me. His eyes were fierce. You saved my life. You gave up everything to make sure I survived. You took out loans you're still paying off. You worked 2 jobs to afford my treatment. Now it's my turn. Now I save you. I wanted to argue, but I was too tired, too broken. All I could do was hold on to him and pray that somehow, some way, we'd find a path through this nightmare. 2 weeks crawled by like 2 years. Ethan found us a new lawyer, a young guy fresh out of law school named Travis Davis. He was honest, eager, and way cheaper than the sharks Lindsay had hired, but he was also inexperienced. This was only his 3rd case. The day of the hearing arrived gray and cold. November wind whipped through the parking lot of the courthouse. I wore my best dress, which I'd bought at a clearance sale 6 years ago. Lindsay showed up in what looked like a designer suit that probably cost more than my car. Her lawyer was a woman named Miss Crawford. Perfectly styled hair, briefcase that screamed money, smile that showed too many teeth. She looked like she ate people like me for breakfast. We filed into the courtroom. Judge Morrison, no relation to Keith Morrison, was a stern-looking man in his 50s with gray streaks in his dark hair. Miss Crawford stood and began her presentation. She had charts. She had financial documents. She painted a picture of me as a lonely, unstable woman living in a house too big for one person. Your Honor, she said smoothly, my clients are not trying to hurt Miss Hayes. They're trying to help her. She's living in a 4-bedroom house on 10 acres. She makes $45,000 a year as a teacher. The property taxes alone are $18,000 annually. She's drowning financially. The responsible thing, the kind thing, is to sell this property and split the proceeds so everyone can move forward with their lives.
She made it sound so reasonable, so logical. Then she dropped the bomb. Furthermore, Your Honor, we have documentation that Miss Hayes has been struggling with her mental health since her parents' accident. She's been treated for severe depression. She's unable to make sound financial decisions in her current state. Travis jumped up. Objection! My client has never been treated for depression. This is fabricated evidence. Miss Crawford smiled that shark smile. I have a letter here from Dr. Harrison Bentley, a licensed psychologist, stating that he treated Miss Hayes for 6 sessions following her parents' accident. I had never heard of Dr. Harrison Bentley in my life. Travis looked at me. I shook my head frantically. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, my client denies ever seeing this doctor. We'd like to call him as a witness to verify this claim. Judge Morrison looked annoyed. This is a preliminary hearing, counselor, not a trial. I'll take the documentation under advisement. He looked at the papers Miss Crawford had submitted. However, I am concerned about Miss Hayes' ability to maintain such a large property alone. Miss Crawford, what are your clients proposing? A quick sale, Your Honor. We have a buyer ready to purchase the property as is for $1.8 million. The money would be split equally between the two sisters. Miss Hayes would have $900,000 to purchase a more appropriate home for her situation. Travis stood again. Your Honor, this house has been in my client's family for 40 years. Her parents built it. She raised her son there. It's filled with irreplaceable memories. You can put a price on property taxes, Judge Morrison said dryly. He studied the papers in front of him for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he looked up. Here is my ruling. The house will be sold. Miss Hayes, you have 30 days to vacate the premises. The property will be listed immediately. Proceeds will be held in escrow until the sale is complete, then divided equally between the parties as stipulated in the will. Court adjourned. The gavel came down. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 30 days. I had 30 days to leave the only home I'd ever known. Travis put his hand on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, Joyce. We can appeal, but that takes time and money. I barely heard him. The room spun around me. I watched Lindsay and Keith stand up, all smiles. Miss Crawford shook their hands, congratulated them. As they walked past our table, Lindsay leaned down. Her perfume was suffocating. You should have just signed when we asked nicely. Now you get nothing but $900,000 and a load of heartbreak. Enjoy packing up all those precious memories. Keith paused too, looking down at me with pure contempt. Guess that dying kid brought you bad luck, after all. Should have let nature take its course 15 years ago. Ethan lunged at him.
Travis and I grabbed his arms, held him back. Keith laughed and sauntered away. Outside the courthouse, I stood in the cold wind and looked at Ethan. I'm sorry, I said. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect your home. Our home, he corrected. And this isn't over yet, Mom. I promise you, this isn't over. But it felt over. It felt like the end of everything. The next week, I tried to go to work. I tried to teach my 3rd graders about multiplication tables and reading comprehension, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting back to the house, to packing up 20 years of memories, to starting over. On Thursday, Principal Winters called me into her office. She was a kind woman usually, but her face was grave. Joyce, please sit down. I've received several complaints from parents, she said carefully. They're concerned about your mental state, about whether you're fit to be teaching their children right now. My stomach dropped. What? Apparently, there's been some publicity about your court case. Some parents saw articles online about the lawsuit, about the claims of depression and instability. They're worried. Lindsay. This had Lindsay written all over it. I've never been treated for depression, I said, hearing the desperation in my voice. That was all lies for the court case, complete fabrications. Principal Winters looked uncomfortable. I believe you, Joyce. I do. But the school board is putting pressure on me. They think it's best if you take a leave of absence, just until things settle down. Paid leave? She added quickly.
We're not firing you, just giving you time to deal with your personal situation. Paid leave. That sounded nice until you did the math. Teachers only got paid for the days they actually worked. Paid leave meant I'd get my salary for the remaining days of the current pay period. About 2 weeks. Then, nothing. I need this job, I said quietly. I have bills. I have a mortgage. I know, she said sympathetically, and your job will be here when you're ready to come back. But right now, the board feels it's best for everyone if you step away. I walked out of her office in a daze. No home in 30 days, no job, no money coming in. That evening, Ethan found me sitting in the living room in the dark, staring at nothing. Mom. He flipped on the light, saw my face. What happened? I told him about the job, about the leave of absence that was really a suspension, about how everything was falling apart. Lindsay did this, I said flatly. She made sure those parents found out about the lawsuit. She's destroying my reputation along with everything else. Ethan's face went hard. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Detective Morrison, it's Ethan Hayes. I need to hire you. Yes, the private investigator. How much? Okay, when can you start? He hung up and looked at me. I'm using my savings. We're going to find out everything about Lindsay and Keith. Where they've been, what they've been doing. There has to be something we can use. Ethan, you can't spend your money on this. It's my money to spend, he said firmly. Besides, what good is money if I can't use it to help the person who matters most to me? A week later, Detective Morrison called with his preliminary report. Ethan and I sat at the kitchen table while he put the phone on speaker. You were right to be suspicious. Keith Morrison and Lindsay Hayes are broke, completely bankrupt. What? I asked, surprised. They opened a tech startup company in Silicon Valley 5 years ago, borrowed heavily from private lenders. The company tanked 18 months ago. They owe over $3 million to various creditors. If they don't pay soon, they're looking at criminal fraud charges. Everything clicked into place. They didn't want the inheritance for sentimental reasons or even greed. They needed it to stay out of prison. The creditors are threatening legal action, Detective Morrison continued. Keith and Lindsay have 30 days to come up with at least half the money or face prosecution. That's why they came back now. They're desperate. After he hung up, Ethan and I sat in silence. They're going to take your house, sell it, and use the money to save themselves. They don't care that it destroys you in the process. I looked around the kitchen. Mom's recipe cards in the drawer, Dad's coffee mug on the shelf, the height marks on the doorframe where we'd measured Ethan every year. I guess I always knew Lindsay was selfish, I said slowly, but I never thought she'd go this far. Desperate people do terrible things, Ethan said, but we know the truth now. We know they're not coming from a place of wanting what's fair. They're coming from a place of survival. How does that help us? I asked. I don't know yet, he admitted, but it's information, and information is power. I wanted to believe him, but with 10 days left until I had to move out, power felt like something I'd never had to begin with. The next few days blurred together. I started packing, boxing up books, wrapping dishes. Each item I put away felt like saying goodbye to a piece of my life. Ethan helped when he wasn't at the hospital. We worked mostly in silence, the weight of what we were losing too heavy for words. Lindsay called twice, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Any luck finding a place yet? I saw a cute little apartment complex on Maple Street, very affordable, perfect for someone on a teacher's salary. The second time she called, she had different news. We found a buyer, she announced cheerfully, someone willing to pay $1.8 million for a quick sale. The closing is scheduled for next month. I hope you're packed by then. I wanted to scream at her, wanted to ask how she could be so cruel, but I just hung up. With 10 days left, I tackled Mom and Dad's bedroom. I'd been avoiding it. This room held too many memories. Mom doing her makeup at the vanity, Dad reading the paper in his chair by the window. I opened Mom's jewelry box. Inside were her pearls, the ones Grandma had given her on her wedding day, her engagement ring, a silver bracelet Dad bought her on their 20th anniversary. I held the pearls and cried, great heaving sobs I'd been holding back for weeks. Ethan found me there an hour later, still crying, surrounded by boxes and memories. He didn't say anything,
just sat down next to me on the floor and held me while I fell apart. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the house being torn apart, strangers living in these rooms, erasing every trace of the life I'd built here. At 2 a.m, I got up for water. I stood in the kitchen looking out the window at the backyard, where Dad had built Ethan a swing set when he was 7. That's when I smelled it. Smoke. At first, I thought I was imagining it, a stress-induced hallucination, but it got stronger, thicker. I turned and saw black smoke seeping under the door to the garage. "Ethan!" I screamed, running for the stairs. "Ethan, fire!" He burst out of his room, saw the smoke, grabbed his phone and called 911 while I ran to get the fire extinguisher from the hall closet. But when I opened the door to the garage, flames roared up. The heat drove me back. The fire was already too big for the extinguisher. "Get out!" Ethan yelled, grabbing my arm. "The house is wood. It'll spread fast." We ran outside. By the time we reached the front lawn, flames were visible through the garage windows. The fire trucks arrived 7 minutes later. 14 minutes after that, they had the fire under control. But the damage was done. The garage was completely destroyed. The kitchen that shared a wall with it was gutted. Black smoke damage covered the first floor. The smell of burnt wood and melted plastic hung in the air. I stood on the lawn in my pajamas and watched firefighters drag hoses through what used to be my home. The fire marshal approached us just as the sun started to rise. His face was grim. "Miss Hayes, I'm Marshal Rodriguez. I need to ask you some questions." "Okay," I said, numbly. "When was the last time you were in the garage?" "Yesterday afternoon. I was packing up some old boxes stored out there." "Did you notice anything unusual? Any strange smells? Anyone hanging around?" "No, nothing." He nodded slowly. "Miss Hayes, this fire wasn't an accident. Someone poured gasoline along the back wall of your garage and lit it with what looks like a road flare. This was arson. Someone deliberately set fire to your house." The words didn't make sense at first. Deliberately. Who would burn my house? Then it hit me. Lindsay, Keith, my sister and her boyfriend. They want to sell this house. If it's damaged, the price drops. They can get it sold faster. Marshal Rodriguez's expression didn't change. "Do you have any proof of that accusation?" "No, but they sued me to force the sale. They've been harassing me. They need money desperately." "I'll need their contact information," he said, pulling out a notebook. "But I have to warn you. Accusations like that are serious. If you're wrong, you could face legal consequences." I gave him the name of their hotel. An hour later, Lindsay and Keith showed up. They must have heard about the fire somehow. Maybe they'd been watching, waiting to see their handiwork. Lindsay rushed up to me, her face a mask of concern. "Oh my God, Joyce, are you okay? What happened?" But her eyes told a different story. They glittered with satisfaction. Keith put on his best worried expression. "Such a tragedy. The house is really damaged now, isn't it?" He couldn't quite hide his smile. Marshal Rodriguez watched them carefully. "Mr. Morrison, Miss Hayes, where were you between 1 and 2 in the morning?" "In our hotel room," Lindy said quickly. "Asleep. We have keycard records. The hotel can verify we didn't leave." And I knew they would, because they wouldn't have been stupid enough to do it themselves. Sure enough, when the police checked, Lindsay and Keith's alibi was airtight. They'd been in their room all night. The hotel's security footage confirmed it. But Ethan didn't believe it. That afternoon, while I sat shell-shocked in his apartment, he went back to the house. The police had left. The fire marshal had finished his investigation. Ethan walked around the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking if anyone had security cameras. Mrs. Patterson, 3 houses down, did. She was 90 years old and paranoid about break-ins. She had cameras covering her driveway and part of the street. Ethan explained what happened. Mrs. Patterson, who'd known our family for decades, immediately pulled up her footage. At 12:53 in the morning, a dark sedan drove slowly past my house. At 1:07, a man in dark clothes walked up my driveway. At 1:23, he jogged back to the car and drove away. Mrs. Patterson's camera wasn't high definition. The man's face was hidden by a baseball cap, but Ethan took photos of the footage with his phone anyway. He sent the images to Detective Morrison,
the private investigator he had hired. 2 hours later, the detective called back. I know that build, that walk. I'd bet money that's Tony Marsh. He used to work for Keith Morrison's company in California. I interviewed some of their former employees. Tony's name came up. He has a record. Assault, arson, extortion. Can you find him? Ethan asked. I can try, but guys like Tony know how to disappear. Ethan dug deeper. He went through Keith's bank records that Detective Morrison had obtained through legal channels related to the bankruptcy investigation. There it was, $5,000 transferred to an account belonging to Anthony Marsh 3 days before the fire. We had the connection. We had the money trail. But when Detective Morrison tried to locate Tony, he was gone. No forwarding address, phone disconnected, bank account closed. That evening, Travis Davis came to Ethan's apartment. He looked at the evidence we had gathered. This is good, really good. But it's all circumstantial. We have Keith paying Tony money. We don't have proof the money was for arson. Tony could claim it was repayment of a loan. We need more. We need Tony's testimony. Good luck getting it, Travis said. If Keith paid him to commit arson, Tony's looking at serious prison time. He won't talk. I sat there listening to them discuss legal strategies and felt the last bit of fight drain out of me. Lindsay and Keith had burned my house. They'd almost killed Ethan and me, and they were going to get away with it. The next day, their lawyer called with a new offer. $1.2 million for the damaged house. Some investor willing to buy it as is, fix it up, and flip it. Your clients need to accept, Miss Crawford. The house is barely livable now. This is the best offer you're going to get. I looked at the blackened walls of my kitchen, at the melted garage where Dad used to work on his woodworking projects, at the smoke stains covering everything I loved. I couldn't fight anymore. I was too tired, too broken. I'll sign, I told Travis. Mom, no! But I shook my head. They win. They burned it down and they win. I can't do this anymore. Ethan's face crumpled, but he didn't argue.
He just held me while I cried in the ruins of the only home I'd ever known. That night, Ethan didn't come home from the hospital. I fell asleep on his couch, exhausted from crying, and woke up at 3 a.m. to find him sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and his laptop. "What are you doing?" I asked, groggy. He looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, but there was something fierce in them, something I hadn't seen before. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what you told me when I was sick. Do you remember when the chemo made me so nauseous I wanted to give up?" I remembered. He'd been 8 years old, throwing up blood, begging me to let him die. "You said sometimes the only way to win is to make your opponent think they've already won. Let them get comfortable. Let them make mistakes." "I don't understand," I said. Ethan turned his laptop toward me. On the screen was an email draft addressed to Lindsay. "We're going to tell them we surrender," he said completely. "We'll sign the papers, agree to the sale, do everything they want, make them think they've won." "But that's what I was already going to do," I said, confused. "No," he said. "You were going to do it because you gave up. I'm saying we do it as strategy. When people think they've won, they get careless. They celebrate. They talk too freely. That's when we catch them." "Catch them? How?" He leaned forward. "Lindsay and Keith are desperate. They're in debt up to their necks. They just committed arson to speed up the house sale. They're not thinking straight. If we can get them talking, get them to admit what they did, we can record it." "That's illegal," I said. "You can't secretly record people." "Actually, in this state, you can," he said. "It's a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows they're being recorded, it's legal. And I'll be that person." I stared at him. "You want to record Lindsay and Keith confessing?" "Not me," he said. "I want to record them celebrating, bragging. Criminals always brag when they think they're safe." "How would you even get close enough to them?" He smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "I have an idea, but you have to trust me and you have to play along. Can you do that?"
I thought about everything Lindsay and Keith had done. The abandonment, the lies, the fire, the systematic destruction of my life. "Tell me your plan," I said. The next morning, I called Lindsay. My voice was flat, defeated. It wasn't hard to fake. "I win," I told her. "I'll sign whatever you want. I'm done fighting." I could hear the triumph in her voice. "Smart decision, Joyce. Finally. Meet us at the title company tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Bring your ID. We'll get this down quick." "Fine," I said, and hung up. That afternoon, Ethan made his move. He'd learned that Lindsay and Keith were having a celebration dinner at the Riverside Hotel restaurant that night, celebrating their victory. Detective Morrison had connections at the hotel. By 6 o'clock, Ethan had a uniform, a name tag, and a job for the evening. He'd be serving drinks in the hotel bar. "Are you sure about this?" I asked him as he got ready. "I'm sure," he said. He showed me the tiny recording device hidden in his shirt pocket. "Top of the line. Can pick up conversations from 15 feet away. I'll stay close to their table. Record everything. If they say anything incriminating, we'll have it." At 7:30, Lindsay and Keith arrived at the hotel restaurant. Detective Morrison had positioned himself at a corner table, watching. I sat in the car outside, too nervous to eat, monitoring everything through text updates from the detective. Ethan served their table, brought them wine, refilled their water, stayed close. At first, they were careful, talked about the weather, about their plans to return to California, about looking forward to putting this whole mess behind them. But as they drank more wine, ordered a second bottle, their guards came down. Detective Morrison texted me, "They're getting louder, more relaxed." Ethan brought them appetizers, stayed nearby, wiping down empty tables, folding napkins, the perfect invisible servant. Then Miss Crawford arrived, their lawyer. She'd been invited to celebrate too. The three of them were toasting their success when Lindsay's voice rose above the general restaurant noise. "I can't believe Joyce fell for it. She was always the stupid one. Mom used to say Joyce had a heart of gold, but the brains of a rock." Keith laughed with her. "Burning that house was genius. Dropped the value by 600,000. She was so broken she couldn't even think straight." Ethan, clearing the table next to them, went very still. The recording device in his pocket was capturing every word. Miss Crawford raised her glass. "To a well-executed plan." They clinked glasses. Lindsay took a long sip of wine. "You know what the best part is? She spent 15 years raising my kid. 15 years of her life wasted on that dying boy. And for what? He survived. But so what? He's just some doctor who will probably burn out by 40. Speaking of the kid," Keith said, his words slightly slurred from alcohol, "remember when we left? You said we should just leave him at a fire station? But I said no. Leave him with Joyce. That way she'd be too busy dealing with a dying child to come after us." Lindsay giggled. "You were right. She never even tried to find us. Too busy playing Florence Nightingale." "Did you ever feel bad? Even a little?" Lindsay held her head. "No. He was dying anyway. The doctor said 6 months at most. I just sped up the inevitable. Why should I waste my life watching him die when Keith and I had a future to build?" Keith leaned back in his chair. "Besides, Joyce wanted kids and couldn't have any. We did her a favor. We really gave her a kid to take care of. Sure, he was defective, but beggars can't choose." They all laughed. Ethan's hand shook as he poured water into an empty glass, but he kept his face blank, kept playing his role. "Remember Martin?" Keith said, his voice dropping slightly. Lindsay's smile faded. "Keith, don't." But he was drunk now. Come on, the guy was going to expose our whole operation, report us to the SEC. We had no choice. "What happened to Martin?" Miss Crawford asked. She looked less comfortable now. "Car accident," Keith said, making air quotes. "Very sad, very unfortunate. His brakes just happened to fail right before a steep hill." "You're drunk," Lindsay hissed. "Stop talking." But Keith wasn't done. "Cost me 15 grand to hire someone to tamper with his brakes. Best money I ever spent.
Martin's wife got the insurance payout. Everyone moved on. Nobody suspected a thing. Miss Crawford's face went pale. You killed someone. We protected ourselves, Lindsay snapped. Martin was going to destroy us. He was going to send us to prison for fraud. We did what we had to do. Jesus Christ, Miss Crawford whispered. I thought this was just a civil inheritance case. You didn't tell me you'd committed murder. It wasn't murder, Keith said. It was self-defense. Preemptive self-defense. They argued back and forth, their voices rising. Other diners were starting to look over. Ethan backed away from their table, made his way to the kitchen, pulled out the recording device, and checked the playback. He had everything, every word, crystal clear. He texted Detective Morrison. Got it, every confession. Meeting outside in 5. Then he texted me. We have them, Mom. We have them completely. 20 minutes later, I sat in Detective Morrison's car and listened to the recording. I heard Lindsay call me stupid. I heard Keith describe leaving Ethan to die as a strategic move. I heard them laugh about burning my house. And then I heard the part about Martin, about murder. This is more than we hoped for, Detective Morrison said grimly. This isn't just civil court anymore. This is criminal, FBI level. They admitted to conspiracy to commit arson and fraud. They admitted to murder. With this recording, they're going to prison for a very long time. What do we do now? I asked. Now, he said, pulling out his phone, I call some friends at the bureau. By midnight, FBI agents had copies of the recording. By 8 the next morning, warrants were issued. The signing was scheduled for 10 o'clock. Lindsay and Keith showed up at the title company right on time, still looking smug and satisfied. Ethan and I were already there with Travis Davis. Miss Crawford hadn't shown up. She'd called that morning and resigned as their counsel. Lindsay noticed. Where's Crawford? She quit, Keith muttered. Something about ethical concerns. Whatever, we don't need her. Let's just get this over with. The title officer, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Chen, laid out the papers. If everyone could just review these documents and sign where indicated. Lindsay reached for a pen. That's when the door opened. 2 FBI agents walked in, followed by 2 local police officers. Keith Morrison? Lindsay Hayes, the lead agent said, holding up her badge. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit arson and fraud, and we have questions regarding the death of Martin Hughes in California. The color drained from both their faces. What? Lindsay stammered. This is insane. We haven't done anything. We have a recording, the agent said calmly, of you discussing hiring someone to burn down property at 147 Oak Street. We also have you discussing tampering with a vehicle belonging to Martin Hughes, resulting in his death. You have the right to remain silent. Keith looked around wildly. His eyes landed on Ethan. Recognition dawned. You. At the restaurant. You were the waiter. Ethan stood up. His face was cold, hard. That dying kid you left, he grew up. He became a doctor. And yesterday he served you drinks while you confessed to multiple felonies. Lindsay's legs gave out. She would have fallen if one of the officers hadn't caught her arm. You can't do this. Joyce, please, I'm family. I stood up and looked her in the eye. You stopped being my sister the night you left a 5-year-old child on my doorstep and told me he had 6 months to live. You stopped being my sister when you abandoned your own son to save yourself the inconvenience of watching him fight for his life. The officers handcuffed them both, read them their rights. Lindsay started crying. Joyce, please don't let them do this. I'm family. Ethan is my family, I said quietly. You're just the woman who gave birth to him and then threw him away. Keith tried to run, made it 3 steps before an officer tackled him. They hauled him up, still fighting, still cursing. As they dragged Lindsay out, she turned back one more time. You'll regret this. You'll never see a penny of that inheritance. I'll fight this until my last breath. The door closed behind them. The title office fell silent.
Mrs. Chen looked at Travis. I assume we're not proceeding with the sale? No, Travis said. In fact, given that Miss Lindsay Hayes is now facing criminal charges and that the lawsuit was based on fraudulent psychological reports, I think we can safely say the original will should be honored. But given the circumstances of her abandonment and her crimes against Miss Joyce Hayes, we will be filing to have Lindsay's inheritance rights revoked. Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. Well, she said, this is certainly the most exciting closing I've never completed. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, FBI interviews, and media attention. The story hit the local news first, then went regional. Local teacher's sister arrested for arson and murder, read one headline. Inheritance battle turns criminal, said another. Reporters camped outside Ethan's apartment where I was staying. We didn't talk to any of them. Travis handled all media inquiries with a firm no comment. The FBI investigation moved quickly, with the recording and Detective Morrison's financial records showing Keith's payments to Tony Marsh. They built a solid case for the arson. Tony was found in Nevada and arrested. Facing 20 years for arson, he made a deal. He testified that Keith paid him $10,000 to burn down my house, 5 up front, 5 after it was done. The murder case took longer. Martin Hughes had died 2 years ago in San Jose. The local police had ruled it an accident, but with the recording and pressure from the FBI, they reopened the investigation. They examined Martin's car, which had been in an impound lot, and found evidence of tampering with the brake lines, and found a partial fingerprint that matched a known associate of Keith's. Keith and Lindsay tried to recant, claimed they'd been drunk, said the recording was taken out of context. Their lawyers, a series of public defenders, because they couldn't afford private counsel anymore, argued entrapment. But one-party consent is legal in our state. Ethan had broken no laws. Everything they had said freely. 6 weeks after their arrest, Lindsay and Keith both took plea deals. Keith got 20 years for conspiracy to commit murder, arson, and fraud. Lindsay got 15 for being an accessory and for her role in the inheritance fraud. Travis filed paperwork to have Lindsay removed from our parents' will based on her abandonment of Ethan, her attempted fraud, and her crimes against me. The judge approved it without hesitation.
The house, damaged but still standing, was mine. All mine. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. The day Lindsay and Keith's sentencing was finalized, I drove to the courthouse. Ethan came with me. We sat in the gallery and watched them stand before the judge. Lindsay cried through the whole thing, begged for mercy, said she was sorry, she'd made mistakes, she deserved another chance. Keith stayed silent, stony-faced. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement, I almost said no. What was there to say? They had tried to destroy me and failed. Wasn't that enough? But Ethan squeezed my hand, and I found myself standing. I walked to the front of the courtroom and looked at Lindsay and Keith. They wouldn't meet my eyes. 15 years ago, I said, my voice shaking, you left a sick child on my doorstep. You didn't leave him because you couldn't afford his medical care. You left him because you didn't want the inconvenience. You didn't want to watch your own son fight for his life because it was too hard, too sad, too real. Lindsay sobbed louder. I spent 2 years sitting in hospital rooms, 2 years watching him almost die a dozen times, 2 years wondering if every day would be his last. But you know what? Those were the most important 2 years of my life, because I learned what real love looks like. Not the kind that runs when things get difficult, the kind that stays, the kind that fights. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, these 2 people tried to take everything from me. My home, my reputation, my livelihood. They burned down my house with Ethan and me inside. They would have let us die to speed up an insurance claim. And through all of it, they laughed. They mocked the child they abandoned. They called him worthless. I looked back at Lindsay. You asked if I'd regret sending you to prison. I don't. Because prison is where people who hurt children belong.
Prison is where people who commit murder belong. You made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences." The judge nodded. "Thank you, Miss Hayes. Mr. Morrison, Miss Hayes, you've been found guilty of serious crimes. Crimes motivated by greed and complete disregard for human life. The sentences I'm imposing are lenient compared to what you deserve. Court is adjourned." The bailiffs led them away. Lindsay looked back one last time. "I'm sorry," she mouthed. I didn't respond. Sorry didn't rebuild my house. Sorry didn't give Ethan back the mother who should have fought for him. Sorry was just the word people said when they got caught. Outside the courthouse, reporters rushed us with cameras and microphones. "Ms. Hayes, how do you feel about the verdict? Are you satisfied with the sentence? What will you do now?" Travis stepped in front of me. "My client has no comment at this time. Please respect her privacy." We made it to his car and drove back to Ethan's apartment in silence. That evening, Ethan and I sat on his balcony, watching the sun set over the city. "It's over," he said quietly. "Really over." "Yeah," I said. "Do you feel better now that they're in prison?" I thought about it. I don't know. I thought I'd feel relieved or vindicated, but I just feel tired. He put his arm around my shoulders. "That's normal, Mom. You've been fighting for months. Your body and mind need time to process everything." "When did you get so wise?" I asked. "I had a good teacher," he smiled. We sat there until the stars came out, and for the first time in months, I felt like maybe, possibly, things might actually be okay. The next week, I went back to the house. The insurance money had come through, enough to repair the fire damage and then some. Contractors had already started working. The garage was being rebuilt. The kitchen was gutted and ready for renovation. I walked through the rooms, seeing past the construction mess to what it would be. My home. Really mine now. Not because of an inheritance split with a sister who hated me. Mine because I'd fought for it. Because Ethan and I had refused to give up. In the backyard, Dad's old swing set still stood. Rusty now, but sturdy. Ethan had played on that swing for hours when he was little. After chemo sessions, when he was feeling better, I'd push him while he laughed and screamed for me to go higher. I sat on the swing now, feeling the creak of the old chains. I closed my eyes and remembered better days. My phone rang. "Travis?" "Joyce, good news. The court finalized everything. The house is legally yours. No claims, no contests, no strings. And there's more. Your parents had a life insurance policy you didn't know about. Small, but it'll help. $50,000. And with Lindsay's inheritance rights revoked, her half of everything else comes to you too. You're looking at about $2.5 million in total assets." $2.5 million. More money than I'd ever dreamed of having. "Thank you, Travis, for everything." "You're welcome. You earned it. Not many people would have kept fighting like you did." After we hung up, I sat on that old sning and cried. Not sad tears this time. Relief, joy, the weight of the last few months lifting off my shoulders. Ethan found me there an hour later. He sat on the other swing and we swang in comfortable silence like we'd done so many times when he was young. "Mom," he said eventually, "I have something to tell you." "What?" "The hospital offered me a position as head of pediatric oncology. It's a big promotion. More money, more responsibility." "Ethan, that's amazing." "There's a catch. They want me to start a research program, study new treatments for childhood leukemia. They're giving me a whole lab, a team, everything I need to help kids like I was." "That's not a catch. That's incredible." "The catch is that I'll be working a lot, long hours. I won't be around as much, and I was thinking you'd need help fixing up the house, getting back on your feet." "Ethan," I interrupted, "you've spent the last 6 months putting your life on hold for me. This is your dream. Take it. I'll be fine. Better than fine." He smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that, because I already accepted." We laughed together, swinging on that old playset, and I felt something I hadn't felt in so long. Hope. Real, genuine hope for the future. The house took 4 months to fully repair. Contractors rebuilt the garage, bigger and better than before. The kitchen got new cabinets, new appliances, new everything. The smoke damage was scrubbed away, walls repainted. It was like the fire had never happened, except now everything was updated and modernized. I went back to teaching that fall. Principal Winters welcomed me with open arms. The parents who had complained, most of them apologized when they learned the truth about Lindsay and Keith's schemes. The ones who didn't apologize, I didn't care about them anymore. My third graders were the same as always, sweet, chaotic, full of questions about everything. Teaching them about fractions and state history gave my life structure again. Purpose. Ethan thrived in his new role.
His research program attracted national attention. Within a year, his team developed a new protocol for treating pediatric leukemia that increased survival rates by 12%. He published papers, gave talks at conferences, saved lives. He met someone too, a pediatric nurse named Kara who worked in his department. She was kind, funny, and treated Ethan like he hung the moon. When he brought her to meet me 6 months into their relationship, I knew immediately she was special. "Your son talks about you constantly," Kara told me over dinner. "How you saved his life, how you're his hero." "I'm not a hero," I said. "I'm just someone who loved a kid who needed love." "That's what makes you a hero," she said softly. 2 years after Lindsay and Keith went to prison, Ethan formally changed his last name to Hayes. Not legally. He'd never had Lindsay's last name anyway, but emotionally. He told everyone I was his mother. Not his aunt, not his guardian, his mother. We made it official that spring. Adult adoption papers. A judge who smiled as she signed them. Ethan was 37 years old, and I was legally adopting him. "Bit late, don't you think?" the judge joked. "Better late than never," Ethan said, squeezing my hand. Lindsay wrote me letters from prison, dozens of them, begging for forgiveness, asking me to visit, wanting to know about Ethan. I never responded, never visited. There was nothing left to say. Keith never wrote. I heard through Travis that he'd gotten into several fights in prison. His sentence got extended for bad behavior. He'd be an old man before he got out. I didn't waste time feeling sorry for them. They made their choices. They lived with the consequences. My life moved forward. I dated a little, nothing serious, traveled during summer breaks, saw parts of the country I'd never visited before, made peace with my parents' memory and the complicated legacy they'd left behind. The house, my house, filled with new memories. Ethan and Kara got married in the backyard. Their daughter, my granddaughter Emma, was born 2 years later. I held that baby and felt my heart grow 3 sizes. Emma looked just like Ethan did at that age. Same dark eyes, same serious expression, but healthy. So beautifully, wonderfully healthy. On Emma's first birthday, we had a party in that same backyard. Kids running around, adults laughing, the smell of barbecue and birthday cake. I stood on the back porch watching Ethan push Emma on the swing set he'd rebuilt from his childhood one. Kara took pictures, calling out encouragement. This was what family looked like. Not blood, not obligation, but choice. Love. People who showed up when things got hard and stayed. Detective Morrison, now retired, attended the party with his wife. Travis brought his new girlfriend. Even Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down came bearing gifts and stories about watching Ethan grow up. As the sun set and the party wound down, Ethan came to stand beside me. "Penny, for your thoughts," he asked. "Just thinking about how different everything is now. 2 years ago, I thought I'd lost everything. And now I realize I never lost anything that mattered. The house is just wood and nails. What matters is the people inside it." He hugged me. "You know what the best part is?" "What?" "Emma's going to grow up knowing what real family means. She'll know that love isn't about biology. It's about showing up, fighting for each other, choosing each other every single day." "You're going to make me cry," I warned. "Too late," he laughed, because I was already tearing up. That night, after everyone left, after the cleanup was done, I sat in my living room.
the same living room where Lindsay and Keith had stood 2 years ago, demanding I give up my home. They tried to take everything, my house, my reputation, my life. They failed because they didn't understand what I had. They thought inheritance was about money and property. They thought family was about what you could take from people. But real inheritance, that's the lessons you pass down, the love you give, the sacrifices you make. Real family, that's the people who stay when everyone else runs. I inherited my parents' house, yes, but more importantly, I'd inherited their values. Work hard, love deeply, fight for what matters. And I'd passed those values to Ethan, watched him become not just a survivor, but a healer, someone who took his own pain and used it to help others. That was the real inheritance, not the house or the money. The love, the strength, the refusal to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. Lindsay and Keith would spend years in prison, bitter and angry, convinced they'd been wronged. They'd never understand that they'd lost long before they were arrested. They'd lost when they chose money over love, convenience over commitment, their own comfort over their own child. I won because I made different choices. Because when a sick little boy showed up on my doorstep, I didn't see a burden. I saw a chance to love someone who desperately needed it. And that love, that choice, gave me everything that really mattered. So, here's what I learned from all of this. Family isn't who shares your blood. Family is who shows up at 3 a.m. when your world falls apart. Family is who fights for you when you're too tired to fight for yourself. Family is who stays. Blood makes you related, loyalty makes you family. And sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born with. 3 years later, Ethan's research led to a breakthrough treatment. Childhood leukemia survival rates jumped to 87%. The medical journals called it revolutionary. I called it justice. The disease that almost took me from him, he turned it into his life's mission to defeat. Emma was 3 now, running through the house with all the energy Ethan never had at her age. Healthy, strong, loved. Lindsay was released on parole after serving 10 years. I heard she moved to Oregon, started over with a new name. I didn't reach out, didn't need to. That chapter of my life was closed. Keith was still in prison, would be for another 8 years. I never thought about him anymore. My life wasn't defined by what they tried to take from me. It was defined by what I built after they failed. The house, fully repaired and updated, stood strong, a testament to survival, to resilience, to the power of refusing to give up. And every night when I turned off the lights and locked the doors, I said a quiet thank you. Not to Lindsay for leaving Ethan behind, but to whatever force in the universe brought that little boy to my doorstep 15 years ago. He saved my life as much as I saved his. So, let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone try to take everything from you? Have you ever fought back against impossible odds? What would you do if your own family betrayed you the way Lindsay betrayed me? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And your stories inspire me to keep sharing mine. And if this story touched you, if it made you think about what family really means, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about survival, justice, and the unexpected families we build along the way. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to fight for what matters. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. And remember, when life tries to knock you down, when people you trust try to destroy you, you're stronger than you think. Keep fighting, keep loving, keep choosing the family that chooses you back. I wish you all the courage to stand up for yourselves, the wisdom to recognize real love when you find it, and the strength to walk away from people who don't deserve you. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.